Hey, welcome back to the channel here at Retirement Planning Made Easy. And today we're going to talk about when do retirement accounts avoid the 10% penalty. So you may be familiar with the 10% penalty, and that is if you're taking money that's in like a qualified retirement account and you pull that money out before you've reached certain ages, then you may have to pay the 10% penalty. But once you get beyond a certain age, then the account is available to be pulled from without that 10% penalty. A lot of times you're still going to be paying tax on the money that you pull out, depending on how it's classified, like if it's not a Roth account, for example. So we're going to talk about how to avoid this 10% penalty. There are some rules in that, and then really get into some very important ages and milestones that you need to be aware of for your own retirement. Now, the age to avoid, just kind of like the baseline where to start on how to avoid any 10% penalty on things like your IRAs, your 401ks, your employer sponsored plan, things like that. That age is 59 and a half. Now, once you get over age 59 and a half, you don't have to worry about that 10% penalty anymore. And keep in mind that 10% penalty, it's not just like a 10% tax. It's the 10% penalty is then also on top of the income tax that you have to pay on your withdrawal if you're pulling from like a pre-tax account, like a traditional 401k, a traditional IRA, things like that. Now, there is another exception out there to avoid the 10% penalty at a younger age, and that's age 55. And it applies to like your 401k, your employer sponsored plan. And I put the word maybe on there. So, for you guys watching on the YouTube channel, you can see my screen. For you podcast listeners, just know it's maybe you can withdraw from your 401k without paying the 10% penalty once you reach age 55. And the way that rule works, and a lot of people are not aware of this, but the way that rule works is that if you're working for an employer and you're age 55 and you leave that employer, you can actually pull money from that 401k account that you were contributing to at the time. You can pull money from that 401k account without the 10% penalty. Now, the reason I say maybe in there is because if you were with a different employer, say in your 20s, 30s, 40s, early 50s, and you had money in a 401k over there at that different employer, that doesn't apply to avoiding the 10% penalty. It has to be from the 401k account at the employer that you were working at when you decided to quit after age 55 or up. Now, so this gives you kind of like a 4 years head start on being able to access and tap into these funds, avoid that 10% penalty, and really just pay whatever income tax is owed on it like you normally would in retirement. So that's the rule of 55. Now, one thing you keep in mind with this is that if you have money in that 401k and you're able to tap into that, you're not 59 and a half yet. Let's say you're 57 and you're able to pull from that 401k at that particular employer when you decided to quit work. If you take those funds inside that 401k and you roll those over into your IRA, you'd lose the benefit of having that early age 55 withdrawal benefit, and you may have to pay a 10% penalty for pulling out funds from your traditional IRA. So you want to make sure that if you have to leave the workforce earlier and you want to have access to some 401k, and you're not 59 and a half yet, but you're in that little window of 4.5 year window there, then you want to make sure that you keep some funds in that 401k account from the employer that you left from when you were over 55, right? Now, this kind of brings up some other important ages that you need to keep in mind as you're planning for your retirement. So let's back up a little bit further and let's talk about age 50. So age 50 is also kind of one of those milestones in retirement because that's the age that you can contribute what they call catch-up contributions to your employer-sponsored plan and to your IRA. So this is being recorded, this video, in the year 2023. For somebody that wants to contribute to their IRA, the limit is $6,500. But if they are age 50 or older, they get a catch-up contribution and they can contribute an additional $1,000 to that, which means they can contribute $7,500. For employer-sponsored plans, think of like a 401k. In this year, 2023, it's $22,500. But if you're over 50, you can have an additional catch-up contribution of $7,500 on top of that. So that is an age to be aware of when you are planning for your retirement. And I highly encourage you, when you're planning for your retirement, don't just wait, a couple of months before you plan to retire, but there's things that you can do beforehand that are going to put you in a better position for when you do retire. So understanding that is very important. That's the age 50 catch-up contribution. We have the age 55, which is really what we just discussed, with your 401k from that current employer. When you leave them, you're able to access that 401k without the 10% penalty. And of course, you have the age 59 and a half. That's the age where all the retirement plans, they get to the point where you don't have to pay a 10% penalty for pulling funds out of them at that age, because it's assumed, hey, that was the purpose of these plans. It was for you to save money. They put some guardrails in place, like a penalty if you pull it out early. But now you're at that retirement age or getting close to it. This is what the money was saved for. And so they don't make you pay that 10% early withdrawal penalty at age 59 and a half anymore. Then another important age range is age 62 to 70. 62 is when you first become eligible for Social Security. You can begin taking Social Security at that age, but it will be reduced from what your full benefit could be. And then most people's full retirement Social Security benefit, it's going to be somewhere between 66 and 67 for depending on the year they were born in. And then they can delay it all the way up to age 70. And once you reach age 70, that's the max delaying extra credits and benefits they give you. So there's no point in delaying Social Security beyond that if you've waited that long, because it's not going to get any bigger. You just go ahead and you claim that benefit at that point. That's going to be an important age to keep in mind with retirement planning, because you have to understand, and this is why, and toward the end of the video, like I do on all my videos, I'll give you a link to getting my essential step-by-step retirement guide. There's actually a section in there that talks about what your income sources are going to be in retirement and what your expenses are. What your expenses are going to have a big factor on determining, when do I need to draw Social Security, because you have to have enough income to cover those expenses. And the longer you delay your Social Security, the bigger that income can be. You may have to delay it later, but some people may be in a situation where it's like, it doesn't matter. I can draw at 62. I'm doing fine. And I've got plenty of extra resources that I can tap into to make sure I have a fantastic lifestyle that I'm living in retirement. So that's an important age range to be aware of, and start looking at your own benefit and what those benefits could be. And if you go and get your Social Security statement from ssa.gov and log in, they'll list out what they're projecting your benefit to be on each of these ages. So it's very helpful information that anyone needs if they're planning for their retirement. The next important age is 65. That's when most people become eligible for Medicare, unless they suffered a disability and they're able to qualify for disability Medicare prior to age 65. This is another important retirement planning consideration, because you have some big choices to make when you turn 65, especially this time of year. As you're watching this video as it's being released, we are actually in the annual enrollment period for people that are on Medicare right now. It goes from October 15th through December 7th. And during this time period, people make choices about how they want to get their prescription drug coverage, or if they want to choose a Medicare Advantage plan. There are pros and cons to that. A couple of videos back, I did a pro and con on supplements versus advantage plans related to Medicare. If you haven't seen that yet, go back a few videos on my channel, or if you're a podcast listener, go back a few episodes on that and check that out. This is a very important age where you have to start figuring out what you want to do about receiving your Medicare benefits, because health insurance in retirement is extremely important, and you don't want to make mistakes when it comes to choosing the type of coverage that you get for that. Now, another important age is age 73. That's where, as of current law right now, keeps getting pushed back, and probably because of longevity in people's lives. Used to be 70 and a half when the IRS required people to start taking distributions from their qualified accounts, like IRAs or 401ks, things like that. They pushed it back to 72, and then they pushed it back again to age 73. You want to make sure that you take those distributions from those accounts so you don't have any penalty that you may owe to the IRS for not doing that. Also, it's very important to keep in mind this date of required minimum distributions, because if you have really large balances in your IRA, let's say it's over $1.5 million, 2.5, 3, whatever it is, when it starts to get really high, those required distributions can also get high. And as you take those distributions, what do you have to do with those? You have to claim those as income on your tax return. So you could literally go from having a much lower tax rate, and then because the IRS is going to require you to pull money from those IRA accounts, then claim a lot more income. And you might even go from paying essentially no taxes to now suddenly your Social Security income is now being taxed where it wasn't before, for example. And understanding that, having an idea that 73 is coming for all of us that make it there, it's going to be here. Understanding that before you reach that can have an impact on the tax planning that you start putting in place for your retirement before there, because you start running out of more options. You have less and less options as you get to that point, and you have to claim that income. Last important age is age 85. If you've ever purchased like a qualified longevity annuity contract, these are contracts where you can set a portion of your IRA money into a QLAC, is what they call them, and you can defer having to pull any money from that IRA account all the way up until beyond 73, but all the way up until age 85. And at that point, it has to start coming out. The IRS says it is time you paid us some tax on this money that you have not been taxed on. We want the money. So that's another important age to keep in mind. Now, what are some of the key takeaways from understanding these different planning ages? First of all, like when it comes to retirement planning, income is very important. You need to determine when you need to take distributions. So we started out by talking about how to avoid the 10% penalty, and that really applies to under 59 and a half. For 401ks, it's under 55 for your current employer thing, the whole 55 rule. But you need to determine when you're wanting to retire, when you need to take distributions, when life throws that curveball to you and you were planning on retiring at age 62, but something happened health-wise, maybe there were some downsizings at work, whatever, and here you find yourself as a 57-year-old that's retired and you're not yet to Social Security age. You want to make sure that you don't make any mistakes as far as like taking that 401k from that current employer you were at and rolling that into an IRA and then not being able to pull from it without taking a 10% hit. 10% is that's a big hit to take. So you want to make sure you determine when you need distributions. Determine which accounts need to be used for distributions to avoid penalties. So in this case, with the 55 rule, that would be your 401k account at that employer if you had to do that. You wouldn't want to touch the traditional IRAs if you didn't have to until after 59 and a half, right? That would be an example. Or another example, if you had money that's not in retirement accounts, but instead it's in what they call non-qualified accounts, just like a regular brokerage account that's not an IRA. You can pull that money anytime because that's just regular money. Maybe that's what you need to be pulling from to avoid 10% penalty. Avoiding those penalties, what it means for you is more money in your pocket, but also longevity-wise, the longer your portfolio can last, and because a lot of people are worried about, am I going to run out of money in retirement? Well, the more money you get to keep and penalties that you can avoid, that means the likelihood of you running out of money later in retirement goes down, and that's a good thing. And then lastly, as far as takeaways, make sure you talk to an expert who can help you put a plan in place to avoid any penalties, because 10% penalties are not the only thing. If you're over age 59 and a half, you don't have to worry about the 10% penalty anymore, but you do have to worry about taxes. And taxes might be another thing that's going to be happening with your portfolio as you pull money out. Taxes not only on the money that you pull from your IRA, but that income you claim for the money that you pull from your IRA can impact the level of taxes that you may be paying on your Social Security income. So you kind of get like this double hit type of thing that goes on here. So make sure you talk with somebody that's an expert that can help you out on that to help minimize those costs, so you keep as much of your hard-earned money in your pocket, so your money has more likelihood of lasting longer in retirement and you have a more secure retirement. That's all I've got for you for today. If you want some more help with your retirement plan, just head on over to retirementplanningmadeeasy.com. It's real simple. Just go over there. You can get a free copy of our essential step-by-step retirement guide. It does talk about some income planning in there that's really helpful. Just put in your name, your email address. I will immediately send that over to you so that you can start working on getting some preliminary numbers together for your retirement to help put you in a better place for that. It's all I got for you for this week. I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for listening on the podcast. Thanks for watching on the channel. We'll see you guys soon.